Oh, hey, what you playing today?
Oh, just some Dark Souls 3.
Yeah.
That's weird. Hmm.
Oh,
What are
that's
you
kind of
playing?
weird. Oh, just some Sekiro. Huh.
Oh,
All right. Ahoy, and welcome back to another Bonfire Chat. I think this is episode 9. Sir Lumber, how you doing today?
doing just great. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. We've both been playing Long Fallen Dynasty.
Yeah, mine is
Together.
out of reach slightly. I don't want to make it awkward. Well, actually, it may be in the other room, so I do not have my copy of Wolong on hand. But
Very
yes,
ill-prepared of you.
correct.
But
I just
we
have the
both...
other Souls
Yes,
style games, as people have
of
already
course.
seen. Yes.
Yep. We both played on the PS5.
Yes.
Took let's see, it came out what, late February or was it early March?
It was March 3rd. I think it was. I
Oh,
believe
it's
that
March.
was
You're right.
on
You're
your
right.
birthday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah, I had a good time with it. This was my first of Team Ninja's Soulsy games. What is your, I guess, your experience with Team Ninja's Souls counterparts?
Yeah. So, um, I've played Neo 1 and Neo 2. I think if you were to consider all of their Soulsy games, I think you have to throw in uh, Final Fantasy Origin, Strangers of Paradise, something.
I get, yeah, I
Something
guess you're
chaos.
wrong. I played that
I've
demo,
not
so I
played.
lied. I played the demo,
Yeah,
so I guess I have played some of their games
I
in a
assume there's a
way.
video out there somewhere because we did a video on the demo for that, right? I
Oh
was very
yeah,
frustrated with that game.
that was, oh
Neo
god,
One,
don't even talk about
Neo One and
that.
Neo Two, Neo One and Neo Two are much better outings for them, and I played both. Neo One, I'm trying to remember. I want to see when did this game come out. It's covered by a sticker from my local game store, so I can't see the
Of
year.
course.
But I did not play it at launch, and I actually only recently acquired this physical copy because I played it. I got it on sale for whatever price, the complete edition, and that's how I played the first Neo. And then I did buy Neo 2 at launch. I had the special edition back there with the steelbook and art book and all that stuff. So I've been a fan of Team Ninja again, aside from their weird Final Fantasy thing.
Hey,
Um,
defeating chaos, I'm sure, is a good time.
actually, I was about to say I have no doubts. I do have doubts.
You have doubts.
So, you know,
So,
maybe it'll be $5 one day, and then perhaps if I have nothing else going on,
do you have an
if I don't
abundance of
wanna
hours?
yeah, if I don't want to replay Dark Souls 3 or like Breath of the Wild or something, then I'll play that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So correct me here if you think I'm misleading, but the way I look at the Team Ninja games, so we both played all the Souls games and Sekiro and all that.
yeah,
I kind of see Neo as Team Ninja's like Dark Soulsy, like their take on the Souls formula, and
yeah.
Wolong is kind of they definitely played Sekiro and took some inspiration from Sekiro.
Yeah, I think there are several ways to dissect that because if you talk about from a story standpoint, it's a little bit more straightforward, even though it is kind of outlandish.
Yeah.
But it's a little easier to follow than the Neo games, and then it's also shorter. It's
Yep.
got a central mechanic that we'll talk about that is similar. So yeah, I hadn't actually thought about it until you brought it up before we started recording. I hadn't thought about it as the Sekiro, like their Sekiro specific outing, but I think that is what it is. Like I
Yeah.
think it fits, yeah, in several ways.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about like spoilers for Sekiro, but the like opening and closing areas like really reminded
Yeah,
me of just
yeah,
like on the nose, like okay,
pretty
this is
funny.
just this is the
Yeah,
same thing again.
they could have done one, but the fact that they wrapped it back with the other, I was like,
Yeah, in
okay,
like the same way the other one happens too is just kind of funny.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, overall, fun game. This game has a really heavy focus on the parry mechanic,
Yeah.
which basically, I guess, the circle button for us. Enemies will have like a big critical attack with a big red flash, and
Yeah.
if you time it right, you basically just do some cool move and like normally kick them in the jaw or something like that. Um,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and then you can get basically like once again, kind of like Sekiro, you can get what do you call them? Not viscerals.
like a death blow type
A
attack.
death blow,
Like
yeah, like
critical
basically like
attack.
a critical hit. There's like a lot of their
Yeah,
health. The whole game's kind of based around this. Enemies will deflect your attacks, so you gotta like basically get them to attack you, and parry theirs is like the more efficient way to take care of them rather than just swinging at them like a madman. Overall, how'd you feel about the parry mechanic? Did you feel like the parry mechanic was?
Yeah. So when you compare it to Sekiro, Sekiro was I don't know. It's hard to say if it was easier to pick up than Sekiro, but Sekiro was also first. But you had the L1 like essentially blocking, which was present in Wolong, which is interesting. Like they did have an L1 block.
I never blocked. I just never blocked.
Very specifically at the very end because I got frustrated on the timing with something. I was like, oh, I could just block this. Like, the whole point was to lead you towards, parry first. And you build up that posture bar, like you mentioned. It was called like the spirit gauge or something. And once that gets filled up, you have the opportunity to do like a critical attack. Now, instead of having like X amount of like death blows like Sekiro did, where you get 3 of them or whatever it was, and then they're finished. This one is like, you chip away big chunks of their health by getting those critical attacks.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you could just whittle them down over the course of 30 minutes if you chose to.
Yeah. And Sekiro was the same. Like, you could do that. You would find it to be a little bit frustrating. They would feel real spongy. It's because the game was not like they want you to do the other thing. They really did build around that mechanic. I did like how you had certain types, I think of spirit attacks, where you could reduce the enemy's like overall spirit bar. So like you had to do less deflects in order to get the critical. I thought that was cool. There was probably some
had that cool like glass breaking sound effect too if you did it.
Right. Oh yeah. Super satisfying. Yeah, I think the timing. I mean, I eventually picked it up. It was a little bit less intuitive. If I had to decide compared to Sekiro, I feel like there was a little bit more forgiveness maybe on that. But then I don't know. Once I got rolling in Wolong, I felt unstoppable. And the same thing happened in Sekiro. Like once you get down that central mechanic and like don't fight it. Like commit to it because they want you to. Like I don't think it's one of those things where. People will get upset. It's like, oh, you're telling me how to play. Like, well, kind of, but it's more just a design choice. And it's like, instead of doing attacks, you are doing this other thing. And, I just say, kind of lean into it. And once you get it, it does feel really good. You may have already mentioned, like, it may trivialize things down the road. Like, maybe you mentioned that before we started recording.
That's what I was going to get. I was going to mention to you. You said it, like, the timing feels unintuitive at first. I thought the same thing. Like, I felt like when I was parrying, it felt like it was a little off. But once I did like learn an enemy's moves, and I knew how to parry them, they became mostly trivial unless there's a bunch of them all around me at once. And as fun as that was to learn and to get good at, it eventually started to drag the game down a little bit for me because the enemy variety, for the most part, is pretty it's pretty sparse. It's like a lot of the same enemies every level. Right. So once you know how to take on, enemy A, B, C, you just kind of stand in front of them, let them do the attack, and then you get them. The bosses were unique. They had, you had to like learn each boss individually. Still got a little easy towards the end. I felt like I was kind of outpacing them, but
I think I could count. I mean, it depends on the point in the game. Like the first boss was supposed to be a challenge because you're learning it. And then after that, I think there were maybe 2 bosses that I took more than 3 tries on. And then I think overall, I would have to go back and really tally it. And if I had kept track, I think I first timed more bosses than I didn't at the end of the day. Like there were a lot of like kind of, just do your deflects, and you'll get it. And if you've got enough healing and all that, even if you mess up, like you'll get through it. But even the bosses got a little bit.
And at some point, even if there was some boss fights where I was messing up a lot. I was like, oh, I'm not doing this one very well. And I would still just win. I don't know if I was, I felt like I was getting all of the health upgrades and I was upgrading my armor and I feel like I was just outpacing them. I was I don't know. I feel like the boss's difficulty was not raising at the rate that my character's stats were for a while there. And like you mentioned, there was a couple exceptions. There was a couple bosses that I had to actually learn, which was nice because I had to actually the hardest boss I had probably a mid game boss other than the first boss. Like you said, the first boss was frustrating for me, but there was a boss in the mid game I had to actually learn, and I had fun learning it. But the rest of the bosses I didn't even really learn them. I just kind of killed them. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, I think we know what that boss is, and I mean I don't know how much we want to get spoiler territory here. I know that boss has been like there have been videos and like people have been talking about it. Like that mid game boss that you're referring to is a big difficulty spike, and then after that, like maybe one or two that like maybe I took 3 or 4 tries, but then for the rest of it, it didn't really stand up. And I don't know if that's just being good at the game or it was probably a little bit of both, like being good at it and also just kind of a balancing thing. And like you said, it is strangely forgiving sometimes. But like basically, there's this like in level like leveling up system. I don't know how to explain it without really just calling it.
Oh
what it is.
yeah.
The morale system in each level where you can like. It's separate from your stat level, but if you keep up with that and like you find these flags that continue to raise that morale or your fortitude, which is we can get into the weeds about that stuff, and it's going to be unintuitive for people. But as long as you like find all that stuff and you get to the boss and you're like pretty much maxed out, you're not going to be taking that much damage as you would if you were way underleveled, and So I think that. Maybe there's a little bit of balance to do. Maybe we're just better at these games than
Yeah, and I guess
average.
we have played a bunch of games like this, so it should make sense. But
I said, I played Neo and Neo 2, and there's more carryover in the feel of those games like than you think. Like if you go back and play those feel like more of a slog because they're longer. Not that they're bad games; they're just like much longer, and there's even more of a loot grind. But the timing of things and just like the overall feel of it. It feels very similar. So having played those games, I think also just helped me out. I can't say for sure if like, any new person to this whole genre, which I think it would still be a difficult game. Like if someone has never played a Dark Souls game,
compared to your average game, it's a more difficult game. Yeah. But I think as far as my experience, as far as games like this, it is on the easier side. Let's talk a little about the exploration. You touched on it. I guess so. You explained the leveling up system. So your character has a level you get from defeating enemies and using some items. Blah blah. You can level up your character, but then, like you mentioned, each level of how it's a level-based game. You go from battleground to battleground to battleground to battleground. Yeah. Within that level, you have a level. Within that stage, you have a level.
Yeah. There's your stat level that is generated by you putting points into different stats, and then there's the in-stage like rank essentially that you earn through finding like these battle markers, like these flags. You're on like a battlefield. You like stamp your mark. You're putting the the flag in, and then you get like a guaranteed like in-level rank that
So basically, it's like the game. Yeah, you want to explore the levels to find what are basically checkpoints, and then you get these checkpoints, and it makes your within stage level go up and makes things around you easier. And all the enemies have these same morale ranks.
It's called a rank,
rank's better, All the enemies and the bosses are always like rank 20. They're always just the top.
I think so,
And then like all the enemies and sub bosses, they have their rank. And if you say you're rank 3 and you go fight a rank 12 enemy, it'll be harder than if you were also rank 12.
And I think it's literally just like a sliding scale, like a factor for how much damage you take and how much damage they take. Like that is what it seems to be. I didn't look into it much further than that. I could just tell, even if I'm like, in-game level 100, whatever. If I'm not in stage rank, whatever. If I'm lower, like I'm gonna take a good amount of damage. Like I said, if it's a level that I'm supposed to be at. It's one thing if I went back to a different one like early in the game, and then you still kind of blow through it. But it matters. It's an interesting like additional wrinkle to encourage you to explore, and then like not let you get complacent just because you've leveled up a bunch. Like it's still a way to kind of check you to like make sure you're not you're still engaged with the game. So I thought it's a pretty interesting.
I really like the exploration, and like you said, it kind of guides you to explore the levels more. But then the exploration came with pros and cons for me. So I liked the level design was pretty good. I liked looking for the hidden flags that were like a little harder to find. And I liked finding like each level had some collectibles that they didn't really do much. They're collectibles for the sake of collectibles, but there was like health upgrades basically, or healing upgrades. You could find those were fun to find. But what I didn't love, and this is like a wider problem with the game, with like the loot system, I would have liked to find more like unique weapons or armor throughout the levels, like something cool to find other than just like the same because all the weapons and armor in this game, until you get towards the end, I would say like the first 3/4 of the game, you're just using the same weapons and armor.
And you and I had to discuss how. So there's all the loot for your armor and for your weapons, and they have different ranks, like 1 to 4 stars.
Like a stars, yeah.
Yeah. So they have rarities. Sorry, I mean, were you interchanging ranks and levels and stuff? It's confusing to explain.
Lots of numbers.
So there are different rarities from 1 to 4, which basically follows a kind of traditional like coloring scheme. It's like white, blue, purple, gold. But those don't actually, like if you get an iron sword gold and an iron sword purple, they still have the same like base stats, but what changes is the amount of like these additional attributes that can be applied to the weapon for like plus 5.2% fire damage, something like that. And that is all that changes. So once you find a weapon that you like, you really just want to find the most rare weapon that you can. Hopefully you come across
the rarest version of the weapon you like. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like we can talk more about the loot system because that'll I'll have to touch on the other games too, because there's some carryovers that I think they maybe shouldn't have. I don't think it really suited this game. I don't know if you want to.
We can just get into that now, I guess. Yeah, basically, my thoughts on the loot system as a whole were like, you've told me that they're really loot heavy, and like I've seen you have to like sell things, and like this game I had just hundreds of items. I just go sell or salvage or sell or salvage, and I feel like it was like meaningless because at some point I had just this crazy amount of like coppers, I guess they're called, and then like crafting material. Because I had just had so much stuff I had sold and salvaged that any upgrade I wanted, I could just like pay for it. And I don't know, like I'm not big. I guess if you're here to get in the weeds with like plus, like you said, 5.2% fire damage, this game has that. If you really wanted to do that, but also it kind of takes the wind out of its sails because you can just like take off any perk and put on a perk you want. For the most part,
there are some that are hard, you have to have a specific material for or whatever. But if you really like doing lightning elemental damage, you can just lean into that. And I think I was actually going to recommend. I think that's probably the best way to go with it. Like, I'm a simple-minded person. I like just raw, like defense stat, attack stat, and then if there's a specific nuance to it, that I want to pursue. And I do like doing the elemental damage and stuff. Just lean into that. Just like put all those attributes on it, and just because the more you spread out those attributes, the less they all do. Obviously,
exactly. So if you have plus 2% in 10 things, it doesn't really matter. You better have 20%.
You're not feeling it. You're definitely not feeling it.
But it's weird because since it lets you just basically respec any weapon with any skills you want, why do I need to get 30 weapons? If I'm just going to make this one weapon what I want, why you give me 40 of them? Like I don't know. So I just had I felt like the loot was overall pretty meaningless, and you don't get a whole lot of unique weapons until later in the game. You start getting like some variations.
I don't even know that they're unique, like because I found like a
different. How about just different?
Different they are different because it's not just like your iron sword, your steel axe. They have like specific names, but you can find rarities of them. You can find variations of them based on their rarity. Even if it's like this pair of swords, which is I had like a legendary pair of swords, like legendary in the lore of the world. Like these swords were wielded by such and such warrior. But then it's like next level, I find like a worse version of it. It's like I just throw them away, and Neo had the same thing. It's like those were usually statistically and like base damage and all that, they were the best weapons, but you can still find a better version of it. It's like, okay, well, this weapon doesn't feel very special. I just found
so I guess what you're really doing is you're finding a weapon type you like. So it's think of it like rather than the 1,000 swords you have, you're just a sword character. You're just using a sword. I use the glaive, which is the sword on a stick.
Sword on a stick.
And but the way the game worked, I rarely got any pushback until certain specific points. So I didn't really feel the need to change much up. I just kind of kept running through with my glaive. I kept using the same weapon pretty much the whole game.
And then they kept like incrementally in the different story missions, they would give you the necessary upgrade material. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take this and put it on my weapon, and then I could keep using that weapon. That's really what you needed to do, and that you would get like already upgraded weapons, but they were like, oh, maybe not the right rarity that you wanted or whatever. So really, once you find what you want, you're going to have the materials to make it, better.
Yeah.
So it's just like stick with that, and that's what I did.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm getting at is if you want to really get in the weeds and customize everything you can, I never felt compelled to. I just found what worked for me, and I never had to change anything. I never had to like put on special fire resistant stuff for a fire boss.
Right.
Like, it just kind of.
Right.
I put on all my weapons and armor. I put on the perk that gives you more like basically experience points.
Yeah.
And I just ran through the whole game like that. And I leveled up my stats through leveling up, and I didn't ever really worry about my loot other than upgrading it.
I think you're always better off having unique stuff in these games. Like the Dark Souls games are pretty good about that. And I never liked the option of upgrading. I mean, I'll do it, but in Dark Souls, for example, since I'm just staring at Dark Souls 3, I can't remember if upgrading your gear was your armor was an option. But if it was, there was still the need, like you alluded to, like what if I face a boss that would really do well? It's doing a bunch of this kind of magic damage or whatever. Yeah. I want to switch my gear up to like match that. In Neo, think about the freaking like trial it would be to like find the right piece of gear to switch it up just to like min-max the defense against the boss, because then you're going to be losing a bunch of other defense. It's not worth it. So yeah, it does kind of like it minimizes the impact of like different gear. So it's just like find what you want, upgrade it, and be done with it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Dark Souls. I'm pretty sure Dark Souls 1 has upgradable armor. I don't think Dark Souls 3 does. I don't remember. Does Elden Ring have upgradable armor? I don't remember.
Couldn't tell you.
But yeah, like you said, like
that game. So
yeah, the way that it works in that game, and I guess this doesn't have to be Dark Souls, doesn't have to be Elden Ring, whatever. No. But the way it works in those games, like the armor is one, a good fashion choice, and two, like they have different like niches, like. You can like put on different armor for different purposes.
Right.
And this one, you're just upgrading one armor set that I was bringing with me the whole way. And if I did need to change things, I need to flip them back and forth. I don't know. It didn't really ever feel like it was necessary to me.
And again, it's like I think it just more like in these games versus Dark Souls or whatever, you just want the base attack, base defense. Like that's what's most important, even more so than in Dark Souls. You could argue it's always the best thing to go for, but in these games for sure. Like,
well, I guess there's one caveat. I guess in this there is a what do you call it? A equipment load thing. So you want to get like different weight bands, which would affect your. I don't know if it affects your parry speed, but I know it was your movement speed and your dodge speed.
Yeah. I stayed pretty light the whole game because I just know if it's gonna affect my timing and all, I'm not gonna like it. I was the same way with Neo as well. Dark Souls.
Once you get comfortable with it, you just stick with it.
Yeah. Well, and Neo and then Wolong now. I just feel the need to move faster. I like moving faster, so I just stick down below. Even if I could min-max it and get a little bit more defense, if I can move as fast as I want, then I'll probably take less damage anyways. So, but yeah, it is one thing to consider. I forget what I was going to say before about that, but yeah, the impact to weight. And maybe it was about the deflection timing because I thought that was maybe a thing like which would be really annoying. Just thinking about it, if I put on one piece of gear and it made me go up a weight band and then like it throws off my timing. Oh no, I can't have that. So it is something to consider though. Because if you're talking about Sekiro, Sekiro is so much simpler in that respect because it doesn't have all kinds of gear and stuff. You have your sword that you upgrade via specific collectible, you have your health, you don't put on armor or anything, you have like the prosthetic attachments that you use, and that's how you kind of customize your own gameplay. But this one, it's like it tried to do the Sekiro thing, but then it brought in the loot grind of the other Neo games. I don't, it
doesn't mesh perfectly. Square peg, round hole kind of thing. Square peg, round hole.
Kind of.
So I mean, we've kind of been a little down on this last couple of minutes. I did like the game. I thought it was a fun game. I really liked going to levels and exploring levels. It was a lot of fun. I like the presentation of the enemies and bosses were cool, even if I felt like they were kind of easy most of the time.
Yeah.
I just think there was specific things about the game that if they had done better with, it could have been really special. It's just I don't know. It felt like. It was just almost there. The level design was fun.
If they put it in front of me to be criticized. Like, if they hadn't put it in front of me, it wouldn't have been a big deal because I basically ignored, like, the loot stuff. Because it's there, I'm criticizing it. But if they had made it very specific sets of armor, very specific weapons that you find, and I just upgrade into one, I wouldn't have had any complaints. But because it was this extra thing I needed to go after every level, I have 100 new pieces of crap that I need to
so
sell.
frustrating, man.
And
Getting rid
I'm
of everything.
OCD as heck, so like I have to get rid of it. So I need to have only the things I want to keep, and even though I don't need to keep most of the stuff, because I have one set of gear that I'm using. But I have to go back and sell it, which the Neo games.
What I was doing to like help myself speed that up, because I was going every level. What I started doing is I would just do. I'd play levels, and then like when I'm done for the night, then I'd go back and sell it all.
That's what I started doing too.
It's like washing my hands at the end of work or something.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's basically like the past few play sessions when it was like the downhill stretch to finish the game. It was like each night I would do a main mission and like 2 or 3 sub missions, and before I got off, I would then do all my selling. So, for like long play sessions over the weekend, it's like, man, I built up how many pieces of gear? This is gonna take an hour just to sell them.
Yeah, exactly. Triangle.
Yeah.
And like. And I was selling them or salvaging them. I was just like mixing it up with no thought because it didn't matter. I had like 4 million coppers. And like, I don't even know what this means. Like, I don't.
The money became meaningless. I didn't have any struggles like upgrading and then I could decorate, which is just like putting a cosmetic layer on it to make yourself look cool. That was like cheap. It might as well have been free. The amount of money. I did notice I didn't run out necessarily, but there was another material that you could use to put like attributes on weapons, the jewels or whatever, which you get from salvaging armor. I got to like 100 of those, and I'd had like 600. I was like, oh, I've been mixing and matching too much. I need to go ahead and salvage some
better
armor.
Cool it for a minute.
Let me go salvage 100 pieces of armor. Oh, okay, I've got 1,000.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. Nothing matters anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they definitely have something here. I think the exploration was a highlight for me. Like the setup of the exploration. Maybe not like what you're finding by exploring. Like finding, like I said, you're finding dumb loot sometimes. But the setup of like making me find different parts of the level to make myself better at that level. Hiding different things. I really like that. And then like some things are guarded by a mini boss, which makes it fun to take down. So yeah, basically my main problem is the loot mechanic felt meaningless, and that led into making the things you're finding from the exploration less meaningful as well.
Right. I mean, the flags that you find throughout the level are good for their own purpose. But yeah, along the way, like, ooh, what's in this door? What's in this building? Like, oh, it's
another
big, cool
iron sword plus 2. It's like, okay,
it's like
I
an
don't care.
ornate chest. Like, it's real big. And then your NPC buddy, which we haven't talked about, the fact that you had like a companion along the way. They'd be like, oh, there's some good gear in here. It's like, oh, steel sword plus 2.
They would always say that. They'd be like, oh, there's some legendary or some rare stuff in here, and then it's just some stupid sword. Like, I have 30 of these. Why am I getting this? Like, why are you talking about this?
And speaking of the NPC like tag along characters, so basically not every level, but in I think most of the levels,
it's like 2/3, 3/4,
more than half for sure. You would have just an NPC person along for the ride with you through the level, which definitely made the game easier. Even if they couldn't do much damage to the enemies, all they needed to do was draw aggro from you, and that trivializes some stuff. It's like, okay, I can just whack on their back while they're hitting my poor NPC dude. Honestly, like the best bosses, and by best I mean in this case the ones that presented the most challenge, were the ones without a companion, because I had to learn it myself. I had to, and sometimes they were a hindrance because they would throw off the timing for stuff. But I did have the most rewarding experience when there wasn't an NPC dude with me. And I, just be by myself, and so I know I can point to like 3 or 4 different bosses that I'm thinking of that were definitely the hardest ones, and that you didn't have. Like, you could summon in people if you wanted, which I never did, just because it really didn't feel necessary. But yeah, those kind of added another layer of ease to the game, I guess.
Yeah, and in these games, in my experience with Souls games, like. The first time you're playing through the game, it feels best when you're like being pushed just enough to where you're barely overcoming it, and you had to like really try, and you figured it out, and you did it. Maybe on later playthroughs, it's fun to roll through and just destroy everything. That has its own thing, but by like a third away in this game, I would feel like I was just rolling through everything until it didn't feel.
Yeah, you've spoken to it like enemy.
I was just running around.
You had like your standard mobs, and then you had like maybe 8 to 10 of like the bigger enemies that maybe at first you're like, ah, crap, I have to fight this thing again. But then after a while, it's like, okay, I know this thing's timing down to a T, and like, it's just another one of those. So there were maybe a couple extra little things they introduced towards the end, but really, like I said, you had the mobs and you had your standard list of like tougher enemies and then the bosses, and that's about it. And maybe that's how the Souls games are too. Like, it just isn't as obvious, maybe because it's not level based, or I don't know. I feel like they do have more enemy variety than this game did, but and that's okay. But,
and the fact that like because the parry mechanic is so central, instead of fighting the enemy like back and forth, I was just kind of waiting until it would do its attack, and then I would counter it and kill it. So like. It wasn't like I hit you, I dodge, you try to attack me. It was just, I'm just going to wait here, I'm going to kick you in the jaw, and then I'm going to stab you and you die.
Yeah, you're going to do your standard combo of swings. I'm going to deflect every single one, and then I'll kick you in the jaw and stab you, and then you're dead. It was very satisfying. That's the thing. I realized that it does sound like we're kind of down on the game. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, the things that are like gripes, specifically the loot, I just kind of ignored. So it's I found what I wanted and pretended there wasn't anything.
It was just kind of like a thorn in my side. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah, and then enemy variety is, I think, a genuine like critique there. That could have been a little bit better. And some of the bosses could have been, maybe a little more challenging. But you want to be careful what you wish for there, because then you get something like
turn that dial a little bit too much.
You get that one up there. That's that trophy or that statue.
Don't worry, Link's got you safe. He's protecting you.
That's like he's protecting me. He's got the arrow trained on her there. But so you want to be careful what you wish for. But at the end of the day, I thought it was really, really fun. It was a pretty good length as well. I did all the submissions. I did all the missions. Like
25, 30 hours probably.
Yeah. I think I probably hit. I think I hit 30 hours. I must have. But that's if you did everything. And there was like some post last mission submissions that I did too. And to be able to say I really completed the game as far as like levels go. In like one hit. I didn't have to wait a couple weeks and come back and like chip at it over time. I pretty much just did it. It was a satisfying experience, and there's definitely going to be DLC. There's already a season pass and whatnot. So if my past experience with the Neo games is any indication, I'll probably play like, if there's 3 of them, I'll beat the first one, try the second one, and then not even touch the third one. That's what has happened in the past. So we'll see how it goes. But
hey, lots of games coming up. Lots of games coming out. I wouldn't mind playing this game again. I liked it enough to play it again. I just don't know if I'll be able to dedicate the time to it. But
same.
Any last minute thoughts on the game?
No, other than just like I said, I don't want this to end on a note that like I didn't like it, because I definitely liked it. It was definitely fun. Like it was, I did enjoy it a lot. So
great
I'll
game.
Go back to it at some point.
Great game. I wouldn't mind seeing a Long Fallen Dynasty 2 one day.
Yeah.
Maybe Iron
Long Risen Dynasty.
Yes, the Risen Dynasty. Yeah. I guess we didn't talk about the story at all. We don't need to talk about the story.
Let's not.
It's just.
I actually will mention one thing. I know we're about to end. It is kind of interesting if you look at the Neo games, and I assume so the Neo games are set in like ancient Japan. This one's set in like ancient China. There is a lot of historical references going on, and like in Neo for sure I know it because I remember seeing things over time, just like what the references were. Maybe I'm just more familiar with like Japanese like historical stuff than Chinese, but like I know there's a lot. They pull in a lot of like kind of historical figures that are not well defined in like history. Like you just kind of hear their names and stuff. You don't know much about them, so they make their own spin on them. Then they add the layer of like the supernatural with the demons and stuff, and that's kind of par for the course. But the story is interesting if you're looking for like, again, the way they've interpreted certain historical aspects.
Yeah, it's like interesting interpretations of stuff, but like.
But it's also wild and doesn't make any sense if you're trying to follow it like from just a gameplay, just story like standard kind of thing. It's like. You need to be like a scholar on the history of these countries to like to really appreciate everything that they're doing. Because like
I had like 20 generals at my back at one point, all with I'm this guy. I'm like I'm sorry, man. I don't know.
I guarantee it's a historical figure or it's like based on something like that, and the battles that are happening are probably based on some kind of interaction that happened, which is cool that they do that, and it probably takes a lot of research and a lot of like study.
A lot of research that probably wasn't. Talking to experts probably wasn't required. Experts react to the Wolong's historical.
I've stopped watching those videos because it's like, why are you critiquing something that's not? I mean, maybe in this case they would say like, that's like they were trying to use this historical battle, but that's not the right one. I don't know. There's probably plenty of critiques to have, but So the story, I would not go to these games. Neo, Wolong, for that. Like, if you think the Dark Souls stories are wild and hard to follow, this one's like, it's not necessarily hard to follow per se, but it just,
It's just dumb.
It's just kind of silly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of silly.
Good stuff. Well, Long's a good game. Try it out. It's on Game Pass.
It is, and I mean, I knew the game I was going to buy. Yeah, I was going to buy it on PlayStation because I like that developer. Who knows how long it'll be on Game Pass, but it is there for people to try. So that's cool.
Yep. Good stuff. All right, thank you, Slumber. Fun times. Enjoyed the game, and maybe we'll play the DLC. Who knows? But
we'll see.
Thanks for watching. Adios.